Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's seminar on the Building Resilience of Infrastructure Insights from the Water Sector. As we gather here today, the importance of this topic cannot be overstated. The growing challenges of climate change, urbanization, and aging infrastructure are putting unprecedented pressures on the systems we depend on, especially our water infrastructure. The water sector is a critical foundation for public health, agriculture, energy, and economic stability, making its resilience essential to our future. Today, we are not just discussing the challenges, but also exploring the immense opportunities available to enhance resilience across both the public and the private sectors. While governments can lead the way with policy reforms, investments, and cross-sector collaboration, at the same time, the private sector offers enormous potential through technological innovations, improved efficiencies, and better sustainable approaches. We will also highlight the role of leveraging technology and innovative approaches to improve efficiency and to mitigate climate risks, which is a crucial aspect of building resilient water systems in today's complex environment. One of the key, or I should say the most interesting aspects of this seminar is the sharing of first-hand experiences and lessons learned from practical experts in the field. Hearing directly from these practitioners from Uzbekistan as well as China, who have actually faced and overcome these challenges, will offer practical insights and actionable strategies for all of us here. Their experiences will show us how resilience can be built into water systems through planning, innovation, and collaboration. By embracing these opportunities, harnessing the power of technology, and sharing knowledge, we can create stronger, more adaptive water infrastructure that not only withstands the shocks of today, but also prepares us for the uncertainties of tomorrow. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to a dynamic and insightful discussion today. I would now like to welcome our session's moderator, Julia Polycarp, AIIB's climate specialist, and our other distinguished panelists onto the stage. Please.
Just moving a little bit so I can see all of the panelists here better. So welcome, hello everyone. My name is Julia Polycarp and I'm a climate change specialist in the AIIB. And I'm very excited to have such a great panel with us here today. And we will be discussing on the water resilience elements. It's our only session on water. So I hope you're all very eagerly interested to hear what the esteemed panelists have to say. So let me first introduce them one by one. Here we have Mr. Khurshid Rakhmatullayev, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Usumtaminot, if I pronounce it correctly. It's the Water Authority of Uzbekistan. Welcome. Then we have Mr. Shuo Gao, who is Principal of the Division of Foreign and Economic Cooperation, Department of Finance, Henan Province of the Republic of China. Then we have Mr. Nadir Nuridikonov, who is the CEO and co-founding member of InfraAsia Capital, based in London. And last but not least, we have Ms. Olga Melozalineli-Rezvina, who is the partner head of the CIS and in the Herbert Smith Freehills law firm in Paris. So we have a very broad panel with very interesting people who are all experts in water sector, PPPs from public, private sector, and the government representatives as well from China and Uzbekistan. So let me start with Mr. Khurshid. And we are talking about water sector here, and we all know that climate change is mostly felt through water. There's either too much water or there's too little water, and we have to do something about it. It's very critical that the governments address these specific challenges. We know that Uzbekistan also is extremely water scarce country, and that 90% of your water resources are actually being used for agriculture. So of course the impacts of climate change are affecting your water production, and with the water shortages even further intensifying as a result of climate change, you will of course need to think about, what could be the solutions to shift the production to a more efficient water uses. So I would very much like to hear from you, what is the government of Uzbekistan and specifically your water authority doing to address the specific challenges of water? Please, Khurshid.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to make one thing clear, that our company serves for the drinking water and sewage water sanitation services. And you are right that 90% of available water resources are used by the agriculture. And only 4% out of 100% available water is used for the drinking water. And one of our tasks is to provide that these 4% should be used only for drinking water and not for agriculture, not for technical, and not for production and so on. Well, if we speak globally, yes, water resources are very limited, not only in Uzbekistan but in Central Asian region. And you are well aware of some projects which are done in neighboring countries, which made in trans-bordering rivers, and therefore we need and we are seeking the possibilities, the opportunities to save all resources what we have. First of all, we speak about and we think about the precipitation of changes, because of the climate change, year to year we have less rains and less snows, and we have some figures, some analytical figures provided by the World Bank. For instance, annual rainfall in Uzbekistan typically was 200,000 millimeters, but now we have less than 100 millimeters per year. But taking to the regional circumstances, some regions of our country may see up to 900 millimeters. Therefore, we must talk and we must act for the diversification. How is it possible? We will speak about the technologies. The other thing is we have glacial melting problem. Our region, we have Tian Shan mountains, and the diminution level of these mountains increased by 30%. It's very problematic issue, and annual reduction of this natural resource goes to almost 1%. It's a report of our ecological minister. Well, the other thing is evaporation, which increases also. And for instance, if we see to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, they say that average global temperature has risen about 1 degree above the pre-industrial levels. It means that melting and water scarcity will go up. Therefore, coming from the obligations taken by the Sustainable Development Goals, we measure a lot of steps, and we annually provide the report on this. And the other thing is, as I told in the starting, 4% of water used for the drinking, we must and we are seeking the possibilities of water saving resources, of saving of the water. drinking water, and we provide some measures and some acts on this. Maybe I will speak a bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khurshid. And now we're moving on to the other part of Asia, onto China. We know that China is regularly experiencing severe floodings. We've seen floodings this year. There was a huge flooding in Beijing last year, and there was a terrible, disastrous flooding that has happened in your province, Mr. Shuao, in Henan in August 2021. So would you like to tell us more about, again, the experiences of the flooding and what were the specific damages as a result of this flood?
Thanks, Julia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gao Shuai. It's a great honor to participate in this panel discussion. I'm from the Henan Provincial Department of Finance and also a member of the Project Management Office for Henan Flood Emergency Rehabilitation and Recovery Project, specifically responsible for the comprehensive coordination, finance procurement, environmental and social work for the project. Today, I will share my experience based on your project. As we all know, global warming is on the way, and China's climate change trend is consistent with the global trend, with a significant increase in temperature higher than the global average during the same period. The adverse effects of climate change on China are mainly reflected in frequent occurrence of extreme weather events, an increase in floods and droughts, increased uncertainty in agriculture production, change in ecosystems, and economic and social impacts. As you know, China is so big a country. China's climate types are complex, and the adverse effects of climate change and their impacts show significant regional differences. For example, the intensity of typhoons in eastern coastal areas has increased. The central region is prone to frequent droughts and floods. In the northwest region, the acceleration of ice and snow melting, frequent flash floods due to snow melt, and the vulnerability of water resource management and ecosystems have intensified. Maybe we can watch a video together to help the project we are implementing.
In July 2021, Henan province encountered a catastrophic flooding disaster, an unprecedented event that affected 14,786 million people and caused enormous economic loss of approximately $17 billion. Henan is located in the central eastern part of China, along the middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River. The disaster exposed the vulnerabilities of urban and rural infrastructures and lack of emergency response capacities. Henan provincial government responded swiftly, backed by strong support from the central government and AIIB, which approved a loan of 865 million euros for post-disaster recovery and reconstruction in the 3 worst affected cities. AIIB's support went beyond financing. It reflected the bank's firm commitment to climate change. To help project cities better adapt and respond to future climate challenges, AIIB targeted to rebuild cities with enhanced resilience in 4 key sectors that include water sector, transport sector, urban sector, and emergency response systems, and through 3 major approaches: systematic improvement, nature-based solution, and climate resilience. Systematic improvement involves urgent recovery and comprehensive upgrading of flood prevention and drainage systems. The Jinshui River Management Sub-project in Zhengzhou is a prime example, enhancing the city's flood prevention capacity to withstand a 1-in-100-year flood event. Nature-based solutions are integral to the project. In Jiaozuo, the Dashi River Sub-project has restored the riverbank, improved the water quality, and is fostering a more robust ecosystem. Climate resilience is central to our long-term goals. Early warning and emergency response systems in Zhengzhou, Xinshan, and Jiaozuo are being enhanced with advanced technologies for real-time monitoring and decision support. Despite the urgency, the project has made significant progress by August 2024, with most constructions complete, demonstrating the power of collaboration and commitment to sustainable development. The project prioritizes environmental and social safeguards. It creates jobs and provides equal opportunities for women, with the electric bus project in Xinshan City employing a significant number of female drivers. Henan Flood Emergency Rehabilitation and Recovery Project is a testament to AIIB's dedication to climate finance and building a resilient future, showcasing the harmony between nature and human beings. Let's come together and collaborate globally to reduce emission, build resilience, and tackle this challenge threatening all creatures on Earth. Temperature is rising and clock is ticking. Let's take action immediately.
Oh, thank you. China has taken a series of measures to addressing climate change, but it also faces many challenges, including: first, the challenging of energy industrial transformation. China plans to achieve carbon neutrality within about 30 years from Peking. Second, balancing economic development and climate change. It's necessary to achieve emission reduction goals while ensuring economic growth. Third, the need for technology and financial support. To strengthen technological innovation and financial investment. Fourth, public awareness and participation. It's necessary to further strengthen climate change education and public participation. Raising public awareness and participation in climate change issues is an important aspect of promoting climate change action. Finally, challenges in international cooperation. We need more global cooperation in addressing climate change. Have you ever been to Henan? Henan is located in the central and eastern part of China, along the middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, with a population of about 100 million. It's a main agriculture production area and an important transportation hub in the country. Henan is my hometown, and my profound feeling is that the amount of rainfall has increased significantly in recent years. Henan is prone to rapid shifts between droughts and floods, which bring great risks to agriculture production and urban safety. On July 20, 2021, a historically rare large-scale heavy rain hit Zhengzhou, the capital of Henan province, and other surrounding areas. Residents unforgettable flood disaster experience for us. Beneath the torn sky, 16 cities became vast sheets of water. Flood ravaged homes and families in distress. This calamity ultimately affected 14.786 million people across 150 counties and caused economic losses of roughly $17 billion. After the disaster, Henan provincial government responded swiftly, backed by strong support from central government and the AIIB, which approved a loan of 865 million euros, equivalent to $1 billion, for post-disaster recovery and reconstruction in the 3 worst affected cities. It reflected the bank's firm commitment to fighting against climate change and building climate resilience. I would also like to express my gratitude for your strong support from the AIIB. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shao, and congratulations on completing such a complicated project, and we're very excited that we were able to support you with $1 billion of loan to the Henan province. So indeed, it was a very fascinating video and a good summary of what has been done so far. Now moving on into Mr. Nadir and speaking about the role of the private sector. I know your advisory services are working on PPPs, and you have also previously worked extensively in Uzbekistan on the PPP projects. We know that water sector usually requires a lot of upfront investment, and there is no better way to bring in the private sector than financing it through the PPP structures. And also speaking about the climate resilience specifically, we know there is a breadth of information about the PPPs, how to do them, how not to do them, and there's a lot of information as well on what specific measures each project has to do to address the climate resilience. But what is the role of the private sector in merging the two of those, and have you, from your experience with working with your clients, seen any interest in addressing the specific measures when it comes to resilience of the water sector?
Thank you very much, Julia, for the question. You know, as you mentioned, I do advise private sector companies on PPP structures for infrastructure projects in Uzbekistan. I have also, prior to that, was on the opposite side. I was heading the PPP Development Agency under the Ministry of Finance, and that was when the country has, for the first time, established the whole PPP process and procedures. Now, prior to coming to government, prior to working in the government sector, I also extensively lived in the UK, worked there in managing PFI projects, doing classical PPP work. When it comes to the climate change and the green agenda in general, what people used to call greenwashing, I always thought that for developing countries such as Uzbekistan, which has a dire infrastructure needs, which is ambitious in the growth targets, where the industry is lagging behind but is quickly catching up, the climate change, resilience, and the green agenda, I thought it was too expensive. It is something that the country wouldn't afford, and all this green agenda, I thought it's a rich boys' toys just designed for richer countries who can experiment, who could use and who could utilize that. However, just in a very short span of time when I came here, now I can see that the governments, the countries such as Uzbekistan, cannot afford not to imply them. growing up in during the time of Soviet Union in this Samarkand, I remember as children we're going on a river Zarafshan, swimming there, spending the time. Now the river is almost dry in quite many places where we used to swim, as Khurshid has mentioned, because of the reduction of the rainfalls, because of the climate change impact in Central Asia in general. We can see the impact of it straight away. And Uzbekistan has a history of being impacted by climate change. Aral Sea disaster, which has dried up quite significantly and turned into environmental catastrophe. Uzbekistan is, as you mentioned, is predominantly agricultural country. More than 20% of GDP goes into agriculture, and quite a lot of service sector is around agriculture as well. And agriculture is water. For us, for Uzbeks, water is food security. Water is the future, is the economic growth, and everything is actually based on water. And it's very striking to see that in the same continent in Asia, we see the countries like Uzbekistan, which are struggling with water, and the countries like China are having a problem of having too much water. And with the governments of the developing governments such as Uzbekistan and the thing, having participation of private companies who have extensive knowledge and experience in the whole process, and actually including the resilient technologies, utilizing the most modern methods in looking at and trying to establish a client resilient outcomes for the projects is very important. Because let's be honest, I mean, for the government is not an entity that is perfectly knowledgeable in all of the technological fields. They're not EPC contractors, they're not operators, and they have quite a lot of competing agendas to deal with policy agendas and regulatory frameworks and things like that. Who are the people who can do the job the best is the private sector. For countries like Uzbekistan, who historically had a state monopoly ever since Soviet times, and who has an outdated infrastructure that urgently needs to be renewed, the best way to go about it is to combine the knowledge and know-how and financing and technologies and the experience of private sector in developing the infrastructure in general. If the countries want to ensure their continuous growth, if they want to ensure that they reach the ambition that they have set up, that by 2030 they're going to be an upper middle class country, that the people's living standards are going to be increased vastly, then the climate resilience is #1 priority, because as I mentioned, the people's livelihoods actually depend on that. And now when we are advising as an advisory firm the private companies and being facilitators between private and public companies, it comes to us as our role not to look at the immediate needs, but actually evaluate the future needs as well and incorporate into, because let's be fair, PPP projects are long-term projects. They are on average 20, 25, up to 49 years according to Uzbek law. In 49 years, if I, in my life of 45 years, if I have seen so much change in such a short time span, then 45 years later, I'm sure that things are going to get much worse if we don't do something about it now. So this is very important for advisories, for private sector and others to start thinking deep and putting the climate resilience as a top agenda whenever they're talking about the infrastructure needs of today.
Thank you very much, Nadir. And now moving on to Olga, it's very important what you, Nadir, mentioned about thinking long term, and the fact that you have to advise your clients, consider the climate resilience elements of it. When we're talking about PPP projects or any other projects, and we always go to that stage of needing to draft the contract and consider what should be included in there. How can we actually do more successful PPP projects or any other infrastructure projects long term in the country? What, from your perspective as a lawyer that is working in an international law firm, what are the key government reforms that are needed to kind of drive more infrastructure projects in the water sector, specifically in developing countries such as Uzbekistan? What is your experience, Olga? Maybe we can show, I think you have a slide, right?
Yes, just one slide. Good afternoon to everybody. Добрый вечер. Всем спасибо большое.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session.
I'm representing the international law firm AIIB Smith Freehills. For all my life, all my career, I'm specialized in PPPs and concessions. So that's the only thing I know how to do. And especially I'm specialized in CIS region and now Central Asia as well. So I will try to talk not very generic about what would be good to do, but what is done already in Uzbekistan under the control of my colleagues already, and what maybe can be improved in order to attract more and more private investors into this market. Maybe a little bit of the stories of PPPs in the water sector. As you know, the PPP started first in the developed countries. And in the years 90, the first big projects in France and in the UK were started as PPPs. The main idea at that time was not to attract the private financing. The real main idea was to use the private operators to improve operational efficiency and quality of service. And I think that even now, that's the main goal, if you agree, about the PPPs. Because obviously, if we're just talking about financing, there are several ways how we can attract financing. But when we talk about PPPs in water sector more globally, the most important thing is what the states will gain apart from the private money. And that's the quality of the services, that the technologies, we will talk about this later. That's something which the state is not capable to do by itself. That's why PPPs started to be very popular and moved from developed countries to emerging markets. And soon everywhere in Latin America, Africa, Asia, I have plenty of examples. It proved the efficiency. So that's how it started in the water sector. And now, obviously, it's evident and PPPs are seen as a real viable solution in the world, so including in Uzbekistan, so what we can understand from the speech of the president of yesterday. So now, what should be done very quickly in order to be sure that the projects will be successful? So first is obviously the clear legal framework. What we mean by that? Because, PPP is the very generic definition of the relationship between private and partner. But in the world, there are several schemes in the water sector, how the private operators work. So I will mention just some of this scheme is performance-based contracts, when the focus is on achieving specific performance outcomes, such as reducing revenue water or improving service quality. It's, of course, design, build, operate. But that's the most common scheme, as well as build, operate, transfer, when the private sector builds and operates the infrastructure for a set period before transferring ownership to the public sector. Obviously, we can also talk about lease contracts, when the private sector leases the infrastructure from the public and responsible for its operation and maintenance, and concessions. So concessions are well known in the world, when the private sector is granted the right to operate and maintain the infrastructure while collecting revenues from the users. So all of them so all these schemes, we can say that all of them are PPPs. So what is very important, and that's our experience here as well, to be sure that if the private operator, private investor is coming with its own scheme, the scheme which proved already to be efficient in other countries, it should work here. So meaning that the local legislation should allow any forms of PPPs. So that's, I mean, that's our view as of the experts of the PPPs in the emerging markets. Now, with regard to Uzbekistan, the situation is quite good. So we have the PPP law, we have also the law on investment agreements, and more or less we can, with some of the risks and some of the mitigation of this risk, we can structure any of the scheme I mentioned before. And I would say, and I know that you did, I mean, in your previous life in the Ministry of Finance, a lot of work of that. So there is in Uzbekistan quite clear and good legal framework. So that's a very good news for all of us, because we consider as the external experts that the legislation is in Uzbekistan in this regard is quite developed. Then there is a second point, maybe a little bit more complicated, is the regulatory stability. So how to be sure, how to ensure that this regulation which exists today will not change suddenly tomorrow, and how these policy changes may impact the private operators. Here, frankly speaking, we had some, not problems, but some issues before, and obviously that's somehow our work. I mean, our work as the external legal advisor to make sure that there are in the PPP agreement the fair risk allocations, and so some provisions which should be bankable, of course, which provide for some protection of the investors against the change in law, especially such changes, they may really impact the financial model for our clients. But let's say that this is very political question, of course, and sometimes it's quite difficult to achieve this, especially with regard to tax stability, with regard to some tariff issues. It's quite difficult issues. But on the other hand, it's more political than legal, because legally speaking, it's acceptable for the government to include such type of protection. So that's good, and we hope that in our community of the experts and with the very high competence in the ministries, we will be able to ensure this regulatory stability. The third one is the transparent procurement process. So here also we can do a big lectures for hours about this, but I would say that, again, as an international expert, I think that Uzbekistan is quite developed in this regard. So let's say there are two ways of entering into the PPP agreement, with all the procurement rules, of course, or with the direct negotiations. So both unsolicited proposal, we may call it. So both ways are absolutely legal, and this is a good point. Obviously, when we talk about direct negotiations and the fact that the private investor spent a lot of time and money in order to develop the project, and at the end, if his technology, so if his proposal is not selected, there is a question of fair compensation of all these efforts. But more or less, the principle is here in Uzbekistan. But then some improvements may still be developed. The fourth one is the financial incentive in guarantees. Here is clear that it's needed to provide financial incentives such as tax, subsidies, and other guarantees to reduce the financial risks for private investors. And in this regard, for Uzbekistan, we can say that the sovereign guarantee is not acceptable, but what's normal, because with such a huge pipeline of PPP project, it's not possible to give the sovereign guarantee guarantees to all the private investors, but again, the contractual guarantees, especially if these guarantees are also provided in the presidential decree, because here the practice of implementing PPPs is such that there is a PPP agreement, but also very often there is a presidential decree with some additional guarantees or the reconfirmation of the guarantees from the president. So it works quite well, and all these projects are proved already the bankability because they are financed. So this is okay. And maybe the last two, but which are quite evident, is the capacity building, meaning that, and I know also that the banks like AIIB as well, you do a lot of training, right, for an educational program for the government, etc., in order to be sure that there is enough capability and competence of the public sector to work on PPPs, and always private consultation, so with the private party. So it's really important to meet the needs of the community, meet the needs of investors, so to listen to the investor in order to make this PPP project successful. So I would say that these 6 elements, now we're talking about the water, if they are implemented in the waters PPP in Uzbekistan, like in any other country, it's kind of precondition for successful implementation of this project. As my, again, own conclusion as an external expert, I think that there is a good basis in Uzbekistan in order to achieve successfully any PPP water project. But obviously, if we go into the details of each of these points, there are the things which good to improve. And obviously we know these points, but this is ongoing process. And I'd like to say that here what I can witness, because currently we are following 4 PPP projects in the country, it's easy to talk to the government, meaning that the government is open to at least to listen their problems, to listen the issues. So that's the good thing. But yeah, a lot of things still need to be developed, improved, and we are sure that the good path is here. But now all of us, we should just follow this path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olga. This was a very comprehensive overview of what is happening in Uzbekistan indeed, and for those of you who are from Uzbekistan, I think it's an incredibly useful summary and helpful to use that perhaps in the future. I would like to touch point on the element you said about the regulatory stability. And I think we've also observed yesterday the president of Uzbekistan spoke a lot about what the country is intending to do and all of the long-term targets. Specifically speaking on the water sector, for example, he has mentioned the plan to save up to 1.15 billion cubic meters of water and also improve water efficiencies by 25%, which is really, really incredible. And my question to Mr. Khurshid now, as a representative of the Water Authority in Uzbekistan, specifically when it comes to technologies, because technologies is the answer and the key as to how you can actually ensure those savings in the water usages. What is Uzbekistan doing on addressing this challenge on the water technologies? What type of technologies should be supported, and how can MDBs or other banks such as AIIB do to support the investment in these technologies at scale?
Thank you, Julia. And definitely yesterday our esteemed president mentioned about the ambitious goals. And if we support this with some figures, I can say that 78% of our population is covered by centralized drinking water, and only 20% is covered by sewage services. That means that we had a lot of things to do including with IFIs and other financing companies and technology companies. Apart from that, our existing systems and objects are out of date. Approximately 25% of our existing pipelines should be urgently reconstructed. Again, it brings to non-revenue water increasing, and nowadays it figures about 30%. It is only in the drinking water system and in pipelines. Therefore, we are seeking and we are working on the implementing of technologies, and we started from ourselves, from our company. For instance, in recent 2 years, we have done very tough work and implemented single and unique billing system all over the country. Because previously we had each region has its own database, own calculations, and own metering system, and we have just integrated them to one system, which brought to the transparency and correctness of the billing and metering. The other thing is, in all our projects, we describe and we implement SCADA system. It is obligatory for all our projects. Also, it brings to the proper metering of all water flows and so on. The other thing is, it's also obligatory in all projects. It's GIS systems, and of course, these systems are very expensive in terms of the implementation, in terms of the exploitation, but it is necessary for us in order to have some reserves, to have some plans for not only the near future, but for the perspective period. This is from our side, from our company side, and from the consumer side, we must speak and we must work much better on the awareness, which my colleague also mentioned about it. It's really important. It's really important in terms of Uzbekistan, where the tariffs are comparatively low. And therefore, the mentality of our consumers in the using of the drinking water should be well developed. Let's talk like this, and it should be well developed, because when the product or the good is, the price for the product is low, nobody can save it. And we are going to this step by step. From the other side, we don't forget about the social impact. Of course, social impact is very crucial for us. And we are now working with a number of consultants on the implementation of new tariff policy, including social security. Maybe we will provide some subsidies, maybe some dotations for the low-income consumers, and so on and so on. Of course, all these measures require financing, and we work closely with a number of IFIs. For instance, for the time being, our investment portfolio is more than $2 billion, which includes 20 actively realizing investment projects. And I'm glad to mention that AIIB is in top of this list. Almost 700 million is the portion of AIIB from this amount. And in perspective, we have prepared a new investment portfolio for another almost $2 billion. And we welcome any offers on this, both on the economical side, on the technical side, on the social side, and not forgetting about the environmental impact. And if there is interest, we are ready to provide such lists. Of course, we don't forget about the PPP possibilities, PPP terms on this. And we also have ready a list of the perspective projects. It's even not the projects, we are ready to provide the whole cities or whole areas for the PPP, for the operative management. We are ready to provide all infrastructure for operative management for some period of time. It will be negotiated indeed. And what else? In this point, I want to mention one point that our people waiting for the results not tomorrow, but we have to be very speedy in all procedures, and therefore we are negotiating with some IFIs in order to speed up the processes, starting from the project preparation, ending the and then going to bidding, procurement, starting of the realization and so on, which takes at least 1 year. And there are some projects which took for more than 2 years only for the preparation. And again, we seek for the possibility for the implementing of different types of biddings, different types of financing methods and mechanisms. And one of them is PPP, and it was very useful for me, especially for the presentation of our colleagues. Of course, we will do our best to implement and to speed up all the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And indeed, speed is sometimes very critical and important, both on the side of the project preparation, as well as, once you decide to do a project, to have a bank and an MDB come and react swiftly to your needs. And I think what Mr. Shao also showed us with the video here, and the example of a very, very dire situation when the flood happens and there needs to be some emergency financing there, you really have to react quickly and address that. So moving on to Mr. Gao, maybe you would like to also share some information with us on this project when it comes to technological solutions that were implemented in the Henan province for the flood rehabilitation projects. We would be very keen to hear from you.
Thanks, Julia. As we all know, technology changes the world. In the process of addressing climate change, technology plays an increasingly important role. In my view, technology can play a key role in the prevention, emergency response, and post-disaster recovery, and the reconstruction of natural disasters such as floods, droughts, and cyclones. For example, number one, precise meteorological monitoring and early warning technology. Through high precision, intelligent meteorological detection equipment and advanced meteorological prediction models, real-time monitoring of weather change is realized. And extreme weather events are predicted in advance, providing decision support for flood control, drought resistance, and response to hurricanes. Number two, flood disaster monitoring, early warning, and emergency technology. Making full use of remote sensing, monitoring, big data, the Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence, and other advanced technologies, real-time monitoring timely, early warning and rapid disposal of flood and burn flood risk points are realized, and the city's resilience and emergency response capability to flood disasters are comprehensively improved. Number 3, resilient infrastructure technology and new materials. In urban infrastructure construction, increased resilience design, build a sponge city, and enhance urban resilience. In addition, the extensive application of new materials, such as high-performance concrete, composite materials, and environmentally friendly materials, further enhance the disaster resistance of infrastructure. Number 4, community resilience support technology. This refers to the comprehensive ability of a community to effectively prevent, respond to, and recover from various disasters and emergencies through its own organization, management, and technical capabilities. Community resilience support technology involves many aspects, including but not limited to risk assessment, early warning systems, emergency resource management, community participation and education, and the use of modern information technology to improve the efficiency of emergency response. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, such a long list of different examples and the different measures you can do within one project to specifically address resilience. And I think the important consideration of that all of these measures will help with identifying, the future flooding severities and allowing for swift response to that. So you're not only building back, but you're also building back better. So I think, again, a very, very brilliant example, Mr. Gao. Now, coming back to Nadir, to you again, and touching base on the private sector. What type of innovation do you see when you speak to your clients and the type of kind of technologies that they would like to see in the PPP projects you are advising them to finance? And where within the project cycle can there actually also be suggestions to consider these technological innovations? So would be very keen to hear from you, Nadir.
Yeah, thank you. Technology-wise, especially in the water sector, as our topic today is water, as Khurshid has mentioned, only 4% of water goes to population as a drinking water. 96% is the agricultural water. It's the biggest share of the water consumption in the country. Not only that, agricultural sector, especially the water management systems and pumping stations, they consume almost 20% of the whole generated energy in the country as well. They are one of the largest consumers of energy in the country. So one of the dire needs in the agricultural sector, as well as in the utilities sector, which Khurshid is managing, is implementing the technology that is affordable, because let's face it, we are not one of the richest countries in the world. It should save energy, because as I mentioned, quite a lot of energy goes to operating those existing technologies at the moment. But the country is growing, it's got big ambitions, and we do need energy. And reduction of the leakages of the water. Unfortunately, today in Uzbekistan, especially in the agricultural sector, in irrigation, there's more than 40% of leakage in either the distribution networks or in the pumping stations or in the water sources themselves, in the canals and in the riverbeds. So the new technologies that needs to be implemented, the classic ones such as more energy efficient pumping stations, the concrete linings on the riverbeds and the canal beds, and so on and so forth, are the must. They are the basis that the country needs to be implemented now and straight away. However, when the assets are renewed, when the assets are implemented, the monitoring system, the AI-based prediction systems on the usage of the water, on trafficking and the management is becoming more and more important in this country, and this is where the private sector can play a big role with coming with this type of innovative technologies. Now, I think Olga will agree with me as well. The whole idea of PPPs is not procuring an asset for a government. The idea of PPPs is getting a quality service for the population. So who is the best position to provide this service is the public sector, as they have not only the technology currently under their disposal, but they're better placed to adapt new technologies going forward as well, and to be prepared and be resilient for any changes in the technology in future. So that's why when we were devising the PPP law and we were devising the PPP structure in this country in general, as Olga has mentioned, we tried to make it as flexible as possible, so that any models that Olga has listed in the partnership of public and private sector could be applied to Uzbekistan. Olga did mention some problems. I mean, obviously the legislators and interpreters sometimes tend to not agree on the things. Yes, especially regarding the regulatory stability, Olga is absolutely right. The regulatory stability is a must for any long-term partnership or for any long-term so-called marriage between private sector and public sector. What I have found out in my experience, that in Uzbekistan, actually making any changes to a law are so difficult and such a lengthy process. So whether you like it or not, there is a regulatory stability. You cannot avoid it. It's just the process takes too long. Secondly, we also did put the clauses in the law where we try to give as much, again, without listing them. I mean, you should, you probably know that Uzbekistan is the civil law country, so what is written is written. This is the law. We don't have any, it's not like in common law where we have precedents and other interpretations that we can use. So we have tried to make the law that that makes whatever is not specifically prohibited is allowed in Uzbekistan. However, in the same time, we try to do that in the way where once something changes and the public-private partner finds itself out of pocket, then they are entitled for compensation. And this is in the law, it's protected for the private partner as well. So it goes both ways. I mean, in order for the government to attract and to implement the projects on a long-term basis, utilizing the private sector's know-how and expertise and financing, then they have to guarantee that private partner is going to be treated fairly, that is going to be allowed to provide the services that they promise to provide, but at the same time that the technological solutions implemented are resilient, are future forward-looking, and they're easy to monitor for all of the stakeholders in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadir. So we understand that, of course, laws are very difficult to change, and at the same time, when you want to bring in the private sector, you're trying to make sure with the implementation of these laws, you're actually protecting their interest, right? But what if something goes wrong? And that's where I'm turning to Olga now. From your perspective as a lawyer who is helping to kind of contractualize all those very complex and large PPP projects, how do you address these risks of technological failure or risks of government not actually necessarily protecting those interests of the private companies? What are the specific considerations that you encounter and look in when you do the projects for the PPPs?
Can we have one slide? Because I was thinking to focus only on one risk, because there are obviously plenty, but one now in the last years becomes very, very, complicated to solve and predict. It's the climate resilience. And so the construction risks linked in our PPP project with the climate resilience. And so that's something completely new, because before, obviously, we always work with the financial advisor and technical advisor, and so we used for years and years to see more or less the same type of risks, which we should, as lawyers, so we should put on the paper, so try to find the right mitigation of risk in the drafting. But now, the comprehensive risk assessment of construction and the likelihood and impact of extreme weather events, it's something which maybe 3-4 years ago I've never seen so much risks which are provided by the technical advisors, because we are not specialists in that, but we just should work with the report, with the due diligence report of our technical and financial teams. And now, especially when we talk about Uzbekistan as well, and so this region as well, we work a lot in Kazakhstan. That's the also extreme weather conditions, but the cold in Astana, in this region. So it's really quite difficult to predict. And in this regard, I know that our partner from technical team, they have quite of innovative climate resilient design right now, and this is also, they now incorporate some principles and project planning for construction, which was never done before. So that's kind of necessary now, and without that, without taking into consideration this risk, we, as the international law firms, which ensure the bankability of the projects, and so has our professional insurance of the top of the drafting of the documents, we may have the big problems if we do not take into consideration this climate resilience issue. And it comes to the more sophisticated work we are doing right now on flexible contractual arrangements, and on the rethinking of what does it mean the force majeure, for example. And even now I will give the example from the energy sector, but we can obviously find the examples from the water sector as well. For example, in Uzbekistan, it's a big trend, for the battery storage, so standalone battery storage projects. And when we are talking about the technology providers, some of them, they have real troubles, because a lot of, we can talk about different locations, but some of the locations, even in this country, in Uzbekistan, they may have in the future years such extreme climate changes and so weather conditions, then there is it does not exist neither in Korea, in China, in Japan. So all of us, they said that our guarantees, our characteristics have some very strong limitations, and so we cannot do anything against that. So that's why, unfortunately, and even again, so not being technical specialists, we see the big changes right now in risk assessment in this regard, with regard to climate resilience. What's the solution? Obviously, the solution is to think better about this problem, to try to find new legal drafting, and so to be agreed so in between private and partner party about this risk mitigations, but it's also to find the right insurance and financial instruments. And so that's maybe maybe the future is with that, because still, when we are talking about insurance, it may work for some of the risk, but not for any risks, of course. And I know that a lot of international, financial institutions, they are developing new products for coverage, financial coverage of this type of new risks. And obviously, all of that, what's the conclusion? We may say that we should monitor and to continue to evaluate these new types of risks very closely and in a very, in a much more detailed as it was before. Because when before we were talking about these changes, it's something little bit philosophical and generic, now we can see it every year in every country for almost every project. So that's our reality. And this reality obviously impacts the structuring of any projects, including PPPs in water sector.
Thank you, Olga. Indeed, I think climate risk assessments is the key solution for embedding these specific considerations for every single project. And for example, here in the AIIB, we too as well are mandatorily requiring that our environmental and social assessments include climate considerations, so that the projects need to see what will be the future risks, what will be the changes in the temperature, what will be the changes in the flooding levels and the precipitation levels, and how can you actually adjust your construction designs to address that. And then, of course, as you want to make sure that that is done, the legal drafting and the legal conditions and covenants that you put in there are critical to do that. So thank you for this very insightful overview. I think we are actually only 2 minutes left, so I think we can maybe have audience ask 1 or 2 questions, very burning questions, and then we will have to close this session. Anybody has a question they would like to ask to our panelists? There's one. May I have, please?
Thank you. So my question is addressed to Mr. Khurshid. I just wanted to know, given the critical role of regional water entities, what, according to you, or how important do you think capacity building is for these entities to effectively implement and maintain resilient water systems? So please share with us what key areas in capacity building should be prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you. If we speak about in the point of our company, we have more than 23,000 plus employees, and only 15% of them has a higher education. Is it good or not? I don't know. Maybe for such company being like exploitation company, it's not so crucial. But again, we have to be sure that our staff is always well known and up to date. I mean, in terms of the technologies, in terms of the economically viable approaches, in terms of the technically approved and technically viable technologies. Therefore, in all our investment projects, we foresee the components of the capacity building. As I said, we had a lot of consultants, a lot of consulting companies who help us in solving this problem. But from the other point, different IFIs have different approaches on this. Therefore, maybe our next step, and we are thinking on this, we want to make the capacity building components under one roof, under one terms of reference, in order to be very clear and very correct on the approaches of the capacity building. This is one point. This is what I talked is the so-called soft components. The other thing is capacity building should not be limited only with soft components. Therefore, we we discussed with our donors, with our IFAs, in order to the matter of increasing the level of hard components. In terms of the attracting new technological and new equipments, new decisions in terms of the technical decisions, in order to make our staff clear, in order to make our staff familiar with such technologies. Okay, that's okay if they don't use it every day, if they don't use it in their activity, but at least they should know that there are such technologies, there are such equipment, and there are such decisions which brings to energy efficiency, which brings to decrease of the non-revenue water, which brings to the prevent of the leakage or prevent of the damages, and so on and so on. Therefore, it was very fruitful today what we signed with SECO and with the help, with the assistance of AIIB. We hope that today signed grant money will be forwarded for these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one last question from the audience? If not, then I would like to thank the panelists for such a great interactive discussion. We heard views from very different sectors and different perspectives in different countries as well. Thank you so much once again, and have a good evening.